Okay, September 5th, Planning Board meeting is now open, and we are on video and being recorded. So if anybody needs to file an appeal or anything, all our information is a public record. First thing on our agenda is lot release, Cornerstone Estates. State your name for the record.
Frank Gallagher Engineering in Foxborough. And I'm the engineer. I'm here with Sean Carnes, who's the applicant, the developer of the subdivision. So at this point, I don't know if any of you have been out there, but the binder course of pavement is in, the utilities are all in, the drainage system is in. The drainage system, which consists of a grass swale and a culvert, all that work.
Oh, boy, you in trouble now.
That's a bad omen, I think.
Apologize.
So at this point, really, and everything's been hydro-seeded, the wetland replication area is all.
I took a ride by, and from one day to the next, it was like, whoa, when did we do all this stuff?
Yeah.
So it does look good.
Yep. So what we'd like is to get 2 of the lots released and have you hold the third lot as surety, at least at this point. And we did submit a partial roadway as-built, which you just got today.
Question, Steve, we have a letter from you?
Correct. For the record, Steve Ventresca with Niche Engineering. So I went to the site this morning as well and generated an email with some pictures that just showed areas that basically it's substantial complete except for the top course. And I suggest holding back some funds, or it sounds like a lot maybe, just because of the plants are just planted and there hasn't been a full growing season. So looking for some type of establishment before, full release.
Did they get a copy of your?
They did not. I just sent it to the board.
Why don't we hand off a copy of your review? And gentlemen,
The copy you can give to the engineer.
lot, they want to release 2 lots, hold 1 lot for surety for completing the additional items that need to be done. And
What's the approximate price to complete the additional items?
So I'd given an estimate of about $5,000, realizing that they still need to do the paving, the top course, so it's probably going to bump it up another maybe 20 to 30,000. That's just a ballpark for that length of roadway.
so holding 1 lot as far.
Should be more than
10 times as much as what it's worth to what needs to be done to complete it. So, any particular lot that you are looking to have released?
We'd like to release 31 and 32.
Do we have a request for the release, Form J, or is there?
No, there's no Form J.
Are you going to produce a?
I haven't done one.
Because you're going to need to give us the paperwork. We can vote on it, but you're going to have to give us something. It did come in as a subdivision, so you're still going to have lot releases.
Okay. So can you vote on it then, and I'll bring that form in to you tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean,
There is a recorded covenant?
there is a recorded covenant.
That's the question.
Is there a recorded covenant? There should be for the private road, is there? Question, is there a recorded covenant?
Right. I believe so. I mean, as far as I know.
Isn't the owner of the property with you?
Yes.
Maybe you might want to ask him. You can step up and state your name for the record.
Sean Carnes, the owner of Cornerstone. And yes, there is a recorded.
Recorded
yes,
covenant?
Covenant, yes.
Did we get a copy of that?
I don't know. You should have.
Okay,
I don't
No.
know offhand, I'd have to look.
so you have to bring us a Form J so we can have that filled out. You can get it offline, or Maureen can give it to you, just fill out the lot numbers you want,
Okay.
and we'll have to come back and we'll have to sign it, or all members have to sign that, or?
If you approve it tonight, we can individually have you sign it afterwards.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. Not traveling anywhere.
Well, I don't have a problem voting on it, but I definitely want to see the covenant and the proposed release.
So, why don't we make a motion that we will release 2 lots on Cornerstone Estates off of King Street, holding 1 lot for basically a retainer to security to make sure that all of the rest of the items are completed. Releasing the Form Js, subject to Burke reviewing both the covenant that's recorded at the Registry of Deeds and the Form J. Anything else?
Second?
Second, Russ, anything, questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So, just get that covenant over to us tomorrow. When you pick up the form, fill it out, and then Maureen will get a copy of that to Burke, and,
Okay, thank you.
all right?
Thank you.
Okay, next, proposed 2-lot preliminary subdivision plan discussion on Locust Street. Step right up. There's one, you have something there? And you have something?
Looks like you've got one for both of us.
Or if you want your own.
No, that's all right. I don't
Oh,
mind
that's me,
sharing.
that's why.
You mind sharing one? Okay.
Art Borden from Arthur Borden and Associates. I
Yes,
have
sir.
with me Mr. Ken Appleby, the owner of the property. Ken came to us, he has over a couple of acres of land there. He was looking for a way to get a second lot at 1051 Locust Street. We suggested this concept to him of providing a 40-foot wide private way with a hammerhead at the end that provides for a little bit more than 150 feet of frontage for the back lot. His lot would conform to zoning with setbacks and everything, and the new lot would conform to zoning. And he would like to move forward to a definitive stage and not go through the formality of a full preliminary plan. And we said, well, we should at least discuss this informally with the board and see what your thoughts are.
So, this, Bob had called me to discuss a couple of issues that we have. The 125 by 125 square has to be 45 feet off the setback,
Okay.
I believe. So was that one of the issues, Bob?
You have a configuration of a lot with a 125-foot box doesn't seem to fit on this proposed plan. Also, there are a couple other dimensional.
Do you have a plan?
I have to adjust the box to fit, but
Will the box be able to fit, or you gonna have to shorten up the road, or?
I know we can make it fit, whether we have to shorten the road a little bit, the configuration is there to make it happen.
What was the other, Bob?
Well, for a retreat lot, it doesn't have the square footage requirement or the width of 50 feet.
Right. So he's not looking to do a retreat lot, he's looking to do a subdivision.
Correct.
With this, we did a retreat lot bylaw, so we would avoid doing these. A subdivision of land has always been in question. A subdivision is 2 lots. You have one existing lot with frontage on Locust Street, and you're creating 1 lot. I guess, any members have any comments before I ask Steve his opinion on?
In my opinion, he's creating 2 lots, so he's got a subdivision. I don't have a problem with that part.
Okay. Do you have a problem with any other part of it?
Well,
While we're discussing it?
he's got to meet the requirements for a subdivision if he wants a subdivision.
Okay. That I gave you, would that fall? I found this online, and it was, what's the section?
81R.
81R of the Mass General Laws. 81R, planning board may, in any particular case where such action is in a public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of subdivision control law, waive strict compliance with its rules and regulations and with the frontage or access requirements specified in said law, and may, where the ways are not otherwise deemed adequate, approve a plan on conditions limiting the lots upon which buildings may be erected and the number of buildings that may be erected on particular lots and the length of time for which particular buildings may be maintained. So, are you familiar with?
I'm not familiar with that, but in listening and reading, the public interest is jumping out at me, and so to me, it seems more of a project that a town or a city would, if they needed to do something in the public interest, whether it was something for water, infrastructure, or
Well,
sewer
but
or something. That's
I happen
where
to
I'm
disagree,
coming.
because if you
Yeah.
read a lot of regs will say, a lot of special permits will say if it's in the public interest, which to me is kind of a silly way of putting it, but a lot of them, that's how they're written. If it's in the public interest or is consistent with the surrounding areas, then the board can waive strict compliance and rules and regs. It's kind of a dumb way of, leaving it open so anybody can say, well, it doesn't meet public interest. So legally, Burke says it's a 2-lot, because he's dividing it, it's a 2-lot subdivision. If, with that being in place, have you ever heard of that before, Burke? Where,
Public interest, sounds like a positive, but it's more a negative, that as long as it doesn't hurt the public interest.
well, that's the way I would see it.
Yeah.
Bob, what else did you have on?
I think the only deficiencies would be the building setback line and the width of the right-of-way, which I think it's only 40 feet.
According to the plan, yes, 40 feet.
It is maintain 150 feet on the existing house lot. I believe this existing house lot is conforming according to that plan.
Well, it's 142 in a straight line, and then we have the radius. You give them half of the distance of the radius, so yeah, it's over 150.
But now you're not gonna have radius on both sides of that, so. Well, I guess, like Mr. Fountain said, if you're looking for a subdivision, you're gonna have to meet some of the regs. We can waive certain things. The 40 feet, we just did Cornerstone Estates, I think it was 40 feet, if I'm not mistaken. We did Judson Street, 40 feet.
Accessing one house lot, that doesn't make sense to have 50 feet.
So, I don't think it's nothing inconsistent of what we've done in the past. Again, we thought, I guess, we were going to avoid these by having a 50-foot estate lot frontage, but So I don't know, did I answer your question? You have to, your 125 by 125 box,
I understand that, yep.
you only have 40 feet, so are you gonna be able to do anything for radius on the other side? Or is that gonna be a waiver, or?
That would be a waiver, because we'd also be looking for a waiver of full compliance with the cross-section, where it's gonna be basically a driveway. We can fulfill paved radius on both sides of Locust Street without doing a fillet on the southerly side.
Is there any wetlands on the property?
No.
Is there anybody in the audience in for or against? John, any questions?
No, other than the issue with the 125 by 125 box. That doesn't fit. That's the only thing I see.
Russ? Anything else?
Nope, I know what I gotta do.
So I guess you go off in that direction,
Yep.
and I would suggest that you do, look at the regs and do a full list of waivers.
Yep.
Just to make sure that you,
Yep.
if you don't have it, you're gonna have to ask for a waiver, or
Right,
this lot in the corner is 47,000 square feet, reduce this down to,
Yep.
whatever you can reduce it down, you can go down to 40,000 square feet.
Yep.
We will be looking at some type of a grading plan for the driveway.
Yep.
Whether we are gonna require stone on both sides to capture some of the water, or, obviously, you have, about 200 feet of road,
right.
and where's the water gonna go?
It's all down gradient from Locust Street to the property, so there wouldn't be any runoff from the driveway going to Locust Street. It would be all kept within the
Well,
property.
I would suggest that
Yeah.
you ask for a waiver on the pavement width.
Yeah.
Run your pavement in, and then have a gravel stone base on both sides of the pavement, which would capture your water, and if the elevation is running into your property, have an area at the end where it will, a little swale or something where the water will disperse from that point. But it's gotta go, it can't just, we can't just let it run.
Right.
It's gotta get directed to
Gotta go somewhere,
a
right.
certain point.
Yep.
Anything else?
I'm good.
That it? Yeah, you have any questions, sir? Nope, just the way I like it. All right, you want to take all these back? A lot of paper here. We don't need them, except Maureen, do you have one?
I have a couple. Is this coming back as a definitive?
It's gonna come back as a definitive.
Okay, just checking.
So what I would suggest you do is, if you, before you come back as a definitive even, if you turn around and do a waiver list, and maybe forwarded that along, and I might, just have it reviewed ahead of time.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we're,
On board.
all right?
Very good, thank you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion, Mastria Subaru. Which is this big thing?
I believe that's it.
He's not gonna be on.
Wow. Building a new dealership here?
Renovation.
State your name for the record?
Steve Gordon, Kirk Perry Construction.
And do we have, you don't have anything for the? This is,
You wanna see it?
I thought this was a drainage thing.
I thought it was, you had us go to conservation for conservation approval, and we've done that. We're moving to the next step for an abbreviated site drawing.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I can, I brought this in front of the board back in April to request an abbreviated site plan approval. without having our engineer review the drainage, because we were gonna have the drainage reviewed at the conservation level with their agent, and that's what they did. The proposal is an addition of parking spaces and a reconfiguration of the detention basin with two small additions on the building. It tripped site plan approval because of the additional parking spaces and the fact that one of the additions is over 1,200 square feet.
Okay, so how big are the additions? Do we have,
We have a 3,100 square feet addition and a 1,300 square foot addition. So they're both over 1,200 square feet. So the reason they have the site plan approval is these two pink areas of the additions, and this shaded area here is an additional parking because they're reconfiguring some parking spaces at the front part of the building at this location.
So they're losing spaces where they're putting in a building, so they need to come up with some more spaces.
No, I don't believe they're losing, they're reconfiguring a couple of spaces from this area over here. And then they're adding more parking, because as you know, dealerships need more parking because they have so many cars. They're adding more parking here, reconfiguring this basin here and enlarging the basin in this location.
so that up in the front, that's what they went to conservation for?
Yes.
Conservation was needed because they were right up against the wetland lines, and they have the detention basin, and the filling in a retaining wall, I believe, in this parking space.
Where is Route 40?
Existing conditions.
Where is Route 44?
Up top.
Up the
Route
top.
44 is here.
All right, that's making more sense.
Your renderings of the building?
Yes, I do.
So this is the piece of this here, the addition, is that it?
So this would be your front
The
elevation.
existing
Yeah, this
canopy
gonna
is
be
part of the
on
addition?
side.
Is that part of the
Addition
additions
on the
now?
rear.
The additions, could you point out where the additions are again, please?
This is the front of the building.
Yeah.
This is the addition here. This is the side view of the addition, and there's a shed addition where actually I believe is storage
That's gonna be,
area. Pots.
it's gonna be
All right.
3 service bays.
I see it on the next page now, wasn't it?
Up at the top, the addition you're putting on,
This is the 3,000 square.
is that looking, if I'm standing at the street looking at that?
Yes, it'd be the service entrances. Right now, there's an existing canopy, and you drive under to drop off your vehicles for service.
Uh-huh,
This is gonna be enclosed,
okay.
so you'll drive in and have a drop off on the
And
interior.
the Nissan building is how far away?
Nissan is probably,
400 feet.
yeah,
Oh, that far, okay. All right.
You meet all the setbacks on that side from Nissan? You're not interfering with the front entryway, you're not changing the front entryway. You don't have, now, is there a list of waivers? Are there waivers? Because there really isn't.
I don't see any on the plan.
Let's see.
I don't believe there was any.
The applicant proposes to relocate expansion of the previous permitted infiltration basin. In an attempt to minimize the size of overall disturbance, the applicant proposes to construction of a segmented block retaining wall. A new storm scepter will be installed. The existing basin will be reconstructed with upgraded standards. The replacement of degraded riprap splash pads at each point inlet. The addition of 3 new emergency overflows. So this is all basically for the drainage. The building itself is pretty small, what you're adding on, 3,000, 1,300 square feet. Questions? Russ?
No, I don't think so.
I don't have concerns with the new buildings. The drainage, I am concerned, but that has been looked at other,
It's been approved by conservation.
okay. I guess I don't have anything then.
John?
I'm good.
Anybody want to, anybody here for the audience for or against, questions, hearing none? Let's we need to,
Well, does this have to go as a site plan or anything, or is this?
well, you
a
said it
minor
came, I wasn't,
modification,
apparently I
or-
wasn't here because I don't remember. This came in front of the board back in April or so.
April 4th, I believe.
So the board must have voted for this to be an abbreviated site plan.
That's correct.
So this has to be approved as, it is approved as an abbreviated site plan. Because at that April meeting, the board must have told him that he can do what he wants to do as an abbreviated. So here's his abbreviated site plan. He went to conservation, did what he had to do.
Does it have to be published or anything?
Yes, we haven't opened a hearing. There's no notices filed, ads. It was never submitted. It was okay, but it wasn't submitted for the abbreviated.
She's correct, that the applicant dropped the ball on this. They should have moved forward after they had conservation. They, for some reason, they didn't have anyone here when I asked to have it approved as abbreviated. They never followed up with an application.
So the abbreviated was voted on, but it wasn't put down as an application or,
That's correct.
So is the approval valid?
how do you vote on something we don't have an
Did we
application? I don't know, I
vote, or
wasn't here
did we
then.
just say that you could do it as an abbreviated site plan?
Yeah, that's all we did was say
Yeah.
that this is
I don't know how
minor
we could-
enough.
If we didn't have a plan
Yeah,
yet, how
you can
could we have voted on it?
Yeah, so they
Well,
have to come back.
It might have been up for discussion.
Yeah, that I can see.
Well. So now it has to
Apply
be,
and come back.
huh?
They need to apply and come back.
So now they have to apply, advertise it, and come back at the next hearing?
If it needs site plan approval.
You have to post it, how long?
Oh, we have to go through the ads in the paper,
How long?
successive weeks.
So it's probably not the next meeting.
Now, I was unaware that you had, that the board had this in front of them as an abbreviated site plan. I was told that it was a small addition that really wasn't affecting anything, and except mainly the drainage, so it didn't seem to be a problem, giving it our blessing.
Well, we've given an informal blessing,
Well,
but
how-
they've got to go through the hoops.
No, there's no way around doing the abbreviated application. You have to do the abbreviated application if that's what they,
Mhm.
were you part of that April meeting?
I wasn't, no.
They didn't send a
The-
representative. I presented it to the board.
Never count on a town official to make things happen.
He made it happen.
Always be
He
present.
got it as far as he could
Always
get
be
it.
present.
They could have paid an engineer to come to the meeting, and instead I did
They
it for
could
nothing. I did it for
have.
nothing, so,
I know,
yeah.
that's never depend on somebody else. Always put your foot forward, and
They got their money's worth.
All right, I'll have them
if you don't make
file.
things happen, don't blame somebody else.
Yep.
So I guess you don't have a problem getting it approved? I'm glad you got conservation approval.
Sorry you have to
Okay.
do what you have to do, but
The formality basically is what you have to get done.
All right, I'll have the engineer file, and we'll move forward.
Like Mr. Iafredi said, pay the engineer, or pay a lawyer, or pay somebody the next time to.
All right, thank you very much.
All right?
All right, thank you.
Take your plans, why don't you take this whole packet, because no sense in doing it over again.
Give me the elastic.
That letter?
Yes, ma'am. I have several of them. Your elastic. So if you have conservation approval, you have an appeal period or whatever you get through. Once you're through with that, I would think, that has nothing to do with the building.
Right,
You can do that.
okay.
I don't see a problem myself. I mean, it's got nothing to do with us. You already have your approval for wetlands.
Yes.
Get that file done, and then you can come in front of us. We're only addressing at this point, we're only addressing the addition, so
Yes. Okay,
at least you can get started before things get bad.
All right, thank you very much.
All right?
Yes, thank you.
Alrighty, thank you.
I guess so, yeah, you got your plan, right?
Yep, thank you.
Cumberland Farms, 883 Broadway site plan. Step right up. Yeah, gonna read a notice.
accordance with provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A and Article 13 of Raynham zoning bylaws, the Raynham Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, September 5th, 2019 at 6:15 p.m. at Raynham Veterans Memorial Town Hall, 558 South Main Street, on application for site plan approval submitted by Douglas A. Troyer, Esquire, Moriarty, Troyer, and Malloy LLC, Braintree, Mass., on behalf of Cumberland Farms, Inc. Applicant proposes to construct a convenience store, 4,650 square feet, with self-service gasoline sales, 6 fuel dispensers with protective canopy, and other associated improvements on the property at 883 Broadway, Route 138, Assessors Map 4, Lot 209, Raynham, Mass. Copy of application and plan are available for viewing at the Raynham Town Clerk's Office and Planning Board Office, 558 South Main Street. During usual scheduled business hours, any person wishing to be heard or interested in the submittal should appear at the time and place designated. Raynham Planning Board, Daniel Andre, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Russ. I was asked to recuse myself at this hearing when this came in front of the board for the zoning.
Rezoning request,
So,
yeah.
with that, I am going to recuse myself, so I don't interfere. You only have 3 members in
Procedure-
front. I do understand that Mr. Gallagher is going to have to recuse himself also because the attorney was representing Mr. Gallagher on a case I don't think you were successful on down the Cape. Are you the attorney? Are you
No,
the
it was
attorney?
me. We actually resolved that case. That case has been dismissed at this point.
So, the case was dismissed, but I'm not sure how that falls under Mr. Gallagher.
It all really comes down to
conflicts.
whether or not it's up to
conflict
the
of
individual
interest.
board member at the end of the day to determine whether or not he or she would have a conflict of interest. We raised it the last time. It was brought to my attention that there was a dispute over some work in which your company performed with the actual property owner.
Well, I don't think there was a dispute. I didn't get paid, so I think maybe.
Well, exactly. So there's.
So I guess that's the dispute.
So I guess at the end of the day, is it actually, would it be something in which would impact your ability to be neutral on it? And it's really your decision
I was asked to
to
leave
make.
last time, and I'm going to leave this time.
Fair enough.
So you're on your own.
All right, so can Chris sit on this?
That's up to Chris if he feels. I know, like I said, the gentleman said that the case was settled. If he didn't win, I'm sure he's not going to be happy. So I don't know if they want him to sit on it.
I think Mr. Gallagher
So
is happy
that's up to
with the resolution of the case.
That's up to them.
I guess for site plan approval, it would be a quorum of the majority. So if we're left with 3, it would be okay.
You need all 3, that's my concern.
Would be a majority of the 3 for site plan. We're not linking special permit involved in this.
2?
Yeah, you would need 2. Just the majority of who's here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Andre, for raising.
All right. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Fountain. You're the lucky guy. Quick.
All right, I think everybody knows where this is. It's the China Garden that is there now that you are going to tear down and put in a Cumberland Farms.
That is correct. The current property consists of about 43,000 square feet. It's located in the business district. It's improved with a vacant 9,201 square foot building.
Excuse me, sir. We know who you are, but could you, for the record?
Oh, I apologize. For the record, my name is Doug Troyer. Here on behalf of Cumberland Farms. With me tonight is Phil Henry from Civil Design Group, who is our project engineer. Also have Maureen, I want to mess up her last name, Chelbeck from McMahon and Associates, our traffic engineer. Thank you for making sure I introduced myself.
Thank her.
Get backing.
Gives me the cues and I just.
Exactly. Basically, currently there's a 9,200 square foot building, which was the former Chinese restaurant known as the China Garden. The owner also owns the abutting property, which is 0 Richard Street, which is a vacant parcel of land consisting of approximately 15,246 square feet. Combined for this combined, the subject property is about 58,000 square feet. And due to the fact that the owner owns both parcels, they are merged for zoning purposes. Cumberland Farms has entered into a lease agreement for the subject property, which is contingent upon Cumberland Farms obtaining all necessary permitting. Cumberland Farms initially came to this board earlier this year to seek the rezone of the 0 Richard Street property, which was the residential portion in the back. That request was denied. Recommendation was not approved by this board. It went to town meeting and was ultimately not granted. As a result, Cumberland Farms went back to the drawing board to take a look at this property in an effort to see what can be done on the business aspect of it. And as you will see, and as Mr. Henry will basically explain to you, we have maintained the majority, if not, of the existing residential property to maintain that buffering. We heard a lot of concerns from abutters about the buffering, and we look to maintain that as much as possible and have been able to design a plan which we believe fits properly and appropriately on the business district. You are correct, we are looking to raise the existing restaurant building completely and replace it with a half-size building of around 4,600 square feet convenience store. We're also looking to provide for self-service gasoline sales and have 6 fuel dispensers. I think probably the best thing to do is kind of educate you on what the changes are, as I have Phil come up and kind of go through the plans, and then we can go from there. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Phil Henry with Civil Design Group. We were the civil engineers on this project, and I think for the folks that remember when we were here, I think in early spring, we had come before the board with a project that substantially assumes the position, I'll use my pointer here on that board here, assumes occupying a good section of that, what is that dark green area, which is currently 0 Richard Street and currently wooded. As we had indicated, this board did not recommend a rezone, and just for reference, that rezone, that zone line is that gray dash line cutting across the property there. We then moved forward to town meeting for a request for a rezone, which was ultimately denied. And along that process, we had met with the abutters a number of times. We had met with them. We had conversations with them after hearings. And we had constantly had evolved the plans to what ultimately is what you see today. If you recall, we used to have 5 curb cuts. We were proposing a building that was in the residential zone. So what is before you now is a condensed project that still meets the needs of our client while also trying to respect, or at least we think respect, the needs or at least mitigating some of the issues that the neighbors have expressed to us. So I think, the story that we definitely want to tell tonight, other than the technical aspects of the project, is that we've listened to the town, we've listened to the residents, and we've tried our best to strike a balance on creating a site plan that not only has physical constraints with streets on all sides, but also vertical constraints too, with high groundwater for stormwater, and also an element of zoning as well. So what we've landed on is a 4,600 square foot building that is completely outside of the residential zone, and I'll work my way from rear to front. We are maintaining 100 feet of vegetated area along Richard Street, Sylvain, and then Wayne Street, which is that back road there. We are proposing a 4,600 square foot convenience store that will have 2 store entrances, one facing Sylvain and one faces Broadway. That will also be supported by side parking along Sylvain Street. Also, there'll be parking along the front of the structure as well. Working towards Broadway, this tan area here is the 6 fueling dispensers that we are proposing. So you have six dispensers, 12 fueling positions, and that will be accessed via 4 curb cuts, 2 on Sylvain, 2 on Richard Street. We're not proposing any on Broadway due to the narrowness of the lot and the fact that it's also DOT and the fact that the side streets almost act as sort of driveways into that whole neighborhood, including the subject parcel here. We had met with, we had a technical review committee meeting some time ago, a few months ago, and we had incorporated those site aspects into this design here. Most notably, there was some concern about visually not restricting the side streets. If you recall, we had come before you guys and had proposed landscaping in the right-of-way, and we were going to seek approval from, I guess, the selectmen to do so. At that meeting, the DPW representative had indicated that they do not want any private trees, if you will, within public property. So we had moved all that landscaping back onto the property to visually have an openness to those side streets. There was also, we were also asked to provide a truck turn for the largest fire apparatus, which we provided, as included in this plan set as well. So
Where is that?
that's actually right there. And then most recently, we received a peer review letter from Niche Engineering. I know Steve is here tonight. We had some discussions leading up to the letter, and I think it's a very fair letter, and I think it's a fairly benign letter. There are some waivers that it looks like we need to include. I'm happy to go through those. I'm prepared to go through those, but I think the nature of these waivers are so minor that I think it's best that we introduce the project to the board, we gain feedback from the board and the abutters, because I'm sure there's some larger topics that we want to discuss rather than deciding if we should have wheel stops or not on the plan. So I'm happy to discuss it at the appropriate time, but I think it might be best to get some feedback from the board and from the neighbors.
I have some questions.
Sure.
It looks like your building is right up against the residential zone?
That's correct, yes.
No setback is needed?
It's on its own lot. Buffer exists 100 feet plus behind it.
Okay. On this plan to the right of the building, what is that area?
Say that again, sir?
To the right of the building?
Yep.
On the plan?
Oh, okay. That is the loading area and dumpster enclosure. And behind that is a landscaped area.
Okay. So that's where trucks are going to pull into to unload goods for the shop?
That's correct.
Okay.
If you recall, at our original plan, we actually had a curb cut on Sylvain. If you follow my pointer on that paperboard, we had a curb cut over here with the loading behind the building. But obviously, there's pros and cons to that, which I think we're all going to find out is the name of the game on this project.
Okay. And your gas tanks are going to be right close to Broadway?
That's correct. Yeah, we wanted to focus the underground storage tanks as farthest away from all the neighbors as far as we could.
And the water table is at 3 feet?
Yes.
And the tanks are going to be how far down in the ground?
15 feet.
Okay. Are they in a dry storage room, or no,
No, they'll have dead man straps, so we're not concerned about buoyancy. Much of this region has relatively high groundwater, so I mentioned the high groundwater mainly from stormwater purposes for surface water. So much of the building footings will be in groundwater as well.
Richard Street at Broadway, it isn't a straight street in from Broadway? You know what I'm saying?
No, there's a slight angle to it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I may.
sure.
We recently had a meeting in this room with DOT. DOT's putting together a plan for 138 roadway improvements from King Philip Street all the way to 495. So they have some plans for each intersection's improvements.
Mhm.
They did discuss this intersection on Richard Street and the fact that that intersection needs to eventually come straight out, and this island that's existing there now is probably going to be removed and repaired so it follows the actual layout. I did ask them if they had any collaboration with you, and they said they had not. So my suggestion is you reach out to them to find out what their plan is for all these intersections, especially these two that affect your project, and maybe redesign accordingly so that you're both on the same page. So you're not making improvements and the year after they come through and they change it.
Okay. Yes, so I think that's a great idea, and in fact, we had our office has made an attempt to reach out to them months ago, mainly related to, there's some stormwater infrastructure that I wanted to see if they would entertain keeping. There's a catch basin right in front of our property. They never responded. However, we realized that at some point, we do have to collaborate with them. We also had what we thought were their latest plan.
This is just for
Oh, okay. Never mind, go ahead.
We are in receipt of what we think are their latest plans, which is, so the sidewalk improvements shown on this plan is actually their plan, and we note the same on our project, that this is not part of the project, but we're just showing it for contextual purposes. So if there are going to be revisions, which would make sense to line up with the right-of-way, actually, and the folks on their right are going to get a substantial piece of property back. I think, yeah, we do need to coordinate with them. There are two utility poles that would need to be relocated, so. But we will make an effort again to reach out to them.
I have a letter from Ed Buckley, the highway superintendent, dated way back on July 2nd. I'm hoping you've seen it.
I don't know if I have.
Well, we won't make you answer the questions tonight, but we would like to know whether the streets are public streets, private ways, who has what rights to them.
Okay, I believe this gentleman was at the informal, at the technical review committee, right, Bob? Yeah, so he generally expressed these concerns or questions at that hearing. I mean, it's our understanding that these streets are public ways, right?
That's my understanding.
Well, we'll certainly need proof of that.
Okay.
Now, Richard Street currently, I understand that it's going to be a straight line out to the street, but at the moment, there's that angle, and it looks like people have to go across someone's lot or across their front lawn to get to Richard Street?
That's the way that's currently.
What's going on now. Okay.
That's existing conditions, been that way for a very long time.
It's really not a front lawn. The actual pavement cuts across there.
There's pavement everywhere.
Yeah,
It's not
so-
something we're creating.
Yeah.
There's pavement everywhere, but if you're coming from Richard Street going onto Broadway, you could not stay in the right-of-way and hit a landscape and sidewalk. So the existing sidewalk stretches across Richard Street such that you do have to go at an angle.
Okay. You show your parcel in the residential area is, nice and dark, like it's got lots of vegetation. I haven't been over there. How much vegetation is there really?
I'm not sure how to answer that. It's existing vegetation that we're not planning on touching.
You're going to add to? Or would you add to?
We are supplementing the landscaping, particularly on the sides, but if If ultimately we get to a discussion about adding some trees between the building and the vegetation, we certainly welcome that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may. I know there are some residents here, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that that vegetation is dense enough that you cannot see the homes on Wayne Street. Is that correct?
There is currently a lot, it's
A lot
not
of
just an
trees.
open area, there's a lot of trees in that
Trees.
area.
There was talk before of drainage going into that area. Obviously, if you're going to put drainage in, you're going to dig trees up.
No, we're not, there's no drainage proposed
Okay.
beyond the limit of work.
All right, so in the residential area, although the land is yours, you're not doing anything with it?
There's not going to be any structures on the residential piece. There is about 5 feet of grading on the residential side, just to catch up to existing grade.
Okay. All right. Russ, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think can't think of anything at the moment.
All right. John, questions?
No, you answered it. I was going to ask you why the entrance on the Richmond and Sylvain Street as opposed to Route 138. You explained how that worked. Anyway, okay, that's all I had. You answered it.
We have some neighbors who might have questions.
Before we go there, does this board like to hear, we also have our traffic engineer here tonight as well. I understand that part of the peer review there is a peer review being done by a traffic, the town's traffic peer review. If there's going to be another hearing, does it make sense to wait to that hearing to actually fully discuss the traffic issues, or if this board would like to hear it tonight? I'd be happy to have Maureen come up and talk now, but maybe for consistency, it may be best to do it at the next hearing.
Well, we might do it this hearing, but I'd like the neighbors to ask any questions they might have over what we've discussed so far.
Fair enough, thank you.
Yes, anyone?
Thank you. For the record, my name is Maria Petty, 2 Wayne Street, not Richard. We, as abutters, do have a number of concerns about this project. However, I'll keep it tonight to concerns about the site plan. They were kind enough, Doug Troy's office was kind enough to share the site plans with us prior to, so we could look at them. I'm so not an engineer and don't understand many of the details, but concerns that we have, of course, drainage. And what we have brought up prior to is the way everything is set up now, as incorrectly as it is. We do get a lot of drainage from Route 138 down both Richard and Sylvain Streets. It causes a river. We've tried to, take care of our property up to the street, but it gets washed away. So now we just leave a gully there with lots of rocks
I remember you talking about that
for
last
drainage.
time.
So my concerns when they say, oh, we do have to bring up the grading a little bit to meet the existing grading of that wooded area. And yes, right now, you can't see very much of the back of the China Garden property from our property. There are mostly deciduous trees, though. So that's more of a summertime benefit that we have. The wintertime, there are very few evergreens, actually, so they're woods that you can see the trees for the forest through. Anyway, so we don't get drainage from those woods so much down to our property. It comes right from Route 138. And we were just saying, tomorrow morning I want to go out and clean out the drain again because it's all clogged with brush and just debris. And we have our friend Dorian dumping some rain on us, so we just expect, I've had neighbors try to plant grass and we watch it just float down the street and eventually into the woods. So that is definitely a concern of ours. I can't tell on these site plans if that grading of the property, when they're finished with it, is going to be higher than the existing residential lot and cause that to also flood. So that's one tiny little question I have.
Well, I'd like somebody to answer that.
Oh,
I mean,
well.
supposedly, in designing anything there shouldn't be any runoff from their property. They should be taking care of it on their property. But I'd
Exactly.
like to hear more about that. So, somebody want to answer that?
Sure.
So the standard by which we manage stormwater is we follow applicable local and certainly state standards. And so the standard in terms of stormwater is you need to mitigate your peak rate of runoff in the post-development conditions. So you cannot send any more water at any given time after your development has occurred. So, and I don't want to put words into Steve's mouth, but I think he would agree that we mitigate the peak flow. So there is going to be, it is anticipated to be less water generated from our site running off to the site. Does that mean we're going to capture everything? No. That means that whatever's going off of our site today, there will be less there tomorrow. Okay? One of the things that I agree with you that there is no runoff from the wooded area because it's wooded. It's much of it, it has a higher saturation level than asphalt. So, and I could tell you the runoff that we are sending towards the back, it is all designed to travel through that wooded area. So therefore giving it ample time of concentration to infiltrate into the ground. I think what perhaps might be experiencing currently is the fact that the China Garden has no stormwater controls. There's no curbing on site. All the driveways are open. And I would say about 100 feet in off of Broadway onto Sylvain and Richard Street, the survey tells us that there's a high point. So the first 100 feet in drains towards Broadway, but the balance of Sylvain and Richard, and certainly Wayne, they all go towards the back, and they travel. And correct me if I'm wrong. It travels to that back area right there. So I took a walk back there months ago, and in a situation like this, I do not know exactly what the problem is. It does look like it could be maintained better, but I could tell you that when we focused on mitigating the flow, that's what we focused on. So in the proposed condition, our driveways, these front driveways are certainly in that Broadway, I'll call it that Broadway watershed, whereas these rear ones straddle that high point in the road between on Sylvain and Richard Street, where the runoff goes towards the back or towards the front. We're capturing this runoff from our site before it goes on, and we're sending it to the front. So we feel confident that we may not fix any problem back there, but I feel confident in saying that we're not going to make it worse.
DOT have any problem with the water running off onto Broadway?
We have not filed with them yet. I had reached out informally. It's been our experience that Mass DOT will not give us any substantial or concrete feedback until we receive our local approvals. So,
that was a general question from your experience in this business.
Yes. So generally, my experience has been they do not allow any drainage connections. Currently, there is a drainage connection from the restaurant into a catch basin that eventually goes into that street. I wanted to reach out to them to see if we could at least utilize that as an overflow, and I think that was your comment too, Steve, in the letter. It makes practical sense. I don't know if it's actually going to come to that, but the existing watershed, the whole front part of that site all drains to Broadway. So whether, I guess, Mass DOT likes it or not, gravity is pulling that runoff onto their street. So because of that, we are taking advantage of some of that, but not increasing the flow.
Okay.
And let me just add one more thing. The reason, so we are maintaining watersheds, meaning that we're not drastically changing. We're not bringing water from the back and bringing it to the front or vice versa. We are maintaining watersheds, and the reason why we are able to reduce peak flow is because we're taking away asphalt, pavement. We're increasing the landscaped area, which which allows water to infiltrate. So that's how we're mitigating flow.
Okay. Is there any drainage system in any of those three streets?
No,
Nothing, it's
unfortunately
just runs across?
That would assist, and I think a lot of the neighbors' concerns as well, but there's not. The only infrastructure that I see is that one catch basin I previously mentioned, and then a trunk line down Broadway.
Just in looking at it, does it make any sense to put anything in along those streets? Swale, a structure, or anything?
You'd have to have an outfall all the way to the rear behind the subdivision into the woods, into the wetlands in the back.
Yeah, because there's the stream, there's an outfall just north, I would say a few hundred feet, and then that stream meanders back around this whole neighborhood. I think the issue is that the right-of-way line at that last person's house, all at the intersection of Wayne and Sylvain, that dead-end road is also the right-of-way line. So the town or somebody would need to secure an easement on the people that own the house behind your house probably own a large tract of land, from what I can tell. They own that. I think they technically have frontage on Sylvain, even though they're on. They actually have usable frontage a few streets down. So I don't really see an opportunity to discharge on town property and then let it meander. So I think an easement would have to be secured by somebody.
Okay. Steve, you have anything to add?
For the record, Steve Ventresca again from Niche Engineering. So Phil is correct that the drainage, so what they're doing there, they're reducing impervious area by about 10%, and they are, as stated, basically splitting the lot from where the proposed building front is and having all that runoff come towards 138. So there's a smaller portion of impervious area going towards the back, towards the vegetated area. My sense is with the uncontrolled runoff going down the side streets, sounds like it's coming from 138, and it sounds like the development, because it's very flat out there and very little curbing that I can remember, that when you have these storm events, everything is sheeting down towards down those streets. So it's interesting to hear that MassDOT is looking to do improvements there, and I'm wondering if they're also going to be doing drainage improvements, which would help with that uncontrolled runoff down those side streets. So I think it's probably fortuitous that this project is coming in now so that they can coordinate and alleviate those drainage concerns.
You think they'll be able to coordinate?
I think they'll be able to coordinate. I've done it on other projects, and other projects that have come before the board, gas stations on 44, also had existing connections into MassDOT drainage systems, and they've been allowed to overflow into the MassDOT system because it was an existing connection and they were grandfathered in. Granted, MassDOT can change their mind at any moment, but on those other projects, the applicant was required to increase TSS, or total suspended solids removal, to the satisfaction of MassDOT. So the applicant may have to do additional work than what they've provided to satisfy MassDOT requirements. And so in my letter, I've asked them to take a look again at stormwater quality, see if they can get additional storage specifically along Route 138 so that they can mitigate TSS and mitigate potentially some additional rate. So that's something that I've asked them to take a look at. And Phil and I have had a discussion about it, and I think he's in agreement and trying to look at it a little bit closer.
I'm not an engineer, but water table at 3 feet tells me that.
So you're supposed to have 2 feet of separation. That's the standard. You can line the systems. Of course, that eliminates infiltration, but it does allow for more water quality. So if we're trying to capture more water and try to increase water quality, then maybe lining the areas in front of the site along Route 138 may be the ultimate answer. But that's calculations that they'll have to perform.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Ma'am, back to.
Can I just add one more thing to the drainage?
Yep.
So we had discussed, in Steve's letter, had discussed lining, and I haven't had a chance to follow up with Steve, but you had touched upon 3 feet, and in our world, 3 feet is nothing, because from a regulatory standpoint, we need to provide 2 feet, but if we provide infiltration within 4 feet, we have to provide what's called a mounding analysis. So in essence, this site would otherwise have to be 4 feet higher than what it is, which is not possible just because of the constraints of what we have to work with. But keep in mind that 3 feet is an estimated seasonal high groundwater. So it's 3 feet in April or May, in June. And it's also still 3 feet of, 3 feet of separation. So that's from a regulatory or a calculation standpoint. What is actually practically happening is once you give water an opportunity to flow over non-impervious surfaces, it is going to infiltrate. Some of it is going to infiltrate until it reaches a saturation point where it runs over. So I think it's important to make the distinction where the water is going today and where the water is going tomorrow and what we accounted for. So for instance, the water that is traveling out onto Sylvain today that is eventually getting back to this Wayne Street is always flowing on impervious surface. It's either on the parking lot or in the street. That same water that we are going to collect and send to that same spot is now going to be traveling through this vegetated area. So, and we didn't account for that infiltration because we're not here saying that we're detaining any water. We're not creating a basin above ground or below ground because we want to salvage that existing vegetated area. So I think it's important to make that distinction that distinction is not going to show up in any stormwater report, but I think practicality will tell you that there will be some additional infiltration. So despite the fact that we are reducing impervious, reducing stormwater flow on paper, I think it's also fair to assume that they'll actually receive a little bit more reduction because of where we're sending the water. Similarly, along the front, where there's no vegetation now, we are adding a vegetated swale. So similarly, we're sending that water to the front, and it's meandering through. It's actually going from right to left on that vegetated green area. So it has a chance to meander and infiltrate. And this is one of the things that Steve and I talked about, perhaps putting some stone check dams to just, as this water's flowing, to hit a barrier, settle, go down, and maybe lining that with a bioretention area. Not taking credit for infiltration, but in the real world, you'll receive something, certainly in low flow storms.
Okay,
So
thank you. Ma'am?
Maria Petty, Wayne Street again, in case you needed that. And he might not want to go far because another pollution issue that is a concern of mine, I'm sure my neighbors share it, is light pollution. The plaza that's located south of Richard Street has done a little monkeying with their outside lighting over the last few years, and it's obnoxious. It's room darkening drapes kind of obnoxious.
Who is this?
The Supreme Plaza. I'm sure they've got approval to add lights, but the lights aren't shining down onto behind the building. They sort of shine out, so we get a lot of reflection. It's uncomfortable and annoying, not unsafe, I'm sure, but there is on, page 18 or so of the plans, there's all the light plans, which looks overwhelmingly bright from a drawing because there are so many of them. I can only look at the joules and look at the voltage and say, wow, that's very reminiscent of the Las Vegas Strip. I only can go by what I know from the other gas stations, specifically Cumberland Farms, but we have a few of them in North Raynham on Route 138. We have more than a few. So they're bright, they're really bright, and the China Garden has always had safety lighting behind and always had lighting in the front. It was never to the point where it was disturbing like this other plaza, so I'm concerned about the additional excessive lighting. I understand that they have to keep it lit for safety. I get it. The only other main issues I have as far as the site plan goes is, and I know that you're probably so sick and tired of discussing it, but traffic. Mass DOT has what looks like a really good plan in place. federal government's kicking in a nice chunk of change because they're making improvements that also improve safety and wellness across the country, with the addition of the sidewalks, ADA compliant sidewalks, and bike lanes on both sides of the street. So people in our neighborhood don't have to risk your life crossing Route 138 just to get on a safe sidewalk. Stroke of brilliance. My concern is the number of cars that enter and exit a gas station and convenience store.
Well,
It's very different.
We'll talk about that.
I'm sure you will. And yes, the folks at the top of Richard Street, it's actually an attorney's office. She does own the building and own the property. And she's been looking forward to getting her chunk of property back for some time and was thrilled that the state is planning on giving it back to her. She has a very small parking lot that only allows for a couple of cars. So she's really looking forward to getting her space back. So that sharp right angle, everybody will say goodbye to it. My other concern as far as safety goes and traffic, there's a bus stop at the top of both of these streets. Bus stop with students from middle school and up, because right now I told the neighbors with young children, just tell the district that Mrs. Petty said that you used to pick up her kids down on Wayne Street when they were really little. So they have been picking up our neighbors' children that are grade school on the street. But fun time is over. They want the middle school students, that's 5th grade, that's 10-year-old. They want them standing up at the top of Richard Street and the top of Sylvain Street with all the empty nip bottles and with the traffic that does not stop for stopped buses. Historically, it doesn't seem like a safe place. My children waited for the school bus in my car in the China Garden parking lot because it's not conducive to students standing out there. The thought of having those curb cuts that are very close to Route 138 and cars pulling in and out of them with students waiting for school buses or being dropped off by school buses. I guess the biggest problem I have with the site plan of this is that it's a gas station. But I know that that's not up for debate tonight and that's not your job. But when you take your plan acceptance into consideration, I hope that those are some of the things that you can look at. And I will definitely be holding all of them to the whole drainage issue. But thank you.
Thank you. We talked about lighting. Actually on the plaza down the street, Supreme, or whatever they call it. We used to have a light meter and we used to go out and check the lighting. Before your time, I know, but
Must be before my time.
I'm just wondering if we could maybe get back into that a little for places that have the runoff, because, you know, the light's supposed to stay on the property.
Have to find out where they did the light meter then.
Is that the plaza that has the cake store in it? And this is Betty?
I'm sorry?
The plaza you're referring to, is that the plaza that has the cake store in it? A cake,
No, it's Supreme with Honeydew Donuts, the run.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
convenience store,
Now I know what you mean.
salon.
She stated, Bob, that they, over the years, have added lighting that wasn't there before. Typically, they come, that might be before your time, but they would come to you to do that, right? No, they could add lighting without,
I don't believe I've seen it in the bylaw.
even if it wasn't in the original plan?
When we approved.
The China Garden added lighting?
No,
No.
the plaza where Honeydew Donuts is?
They have been before us when they redid, you know, the drive where you go in front of the donut shop and around and whatnot. They came before us, and I would think we would have gone over lighting at that time. And if we did, it would have said, you know, your lighting has to conform to the plan. And if they're adding light since then, and it's not just them, other places too, they're no longer in conformance with our site plans.
That's correct.
So,
I have to look into that for you.
yeah, we can talk about that later, but lighting is an issue.
Just for the board's information, this applicant is in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. They need a special permit for a gas station. So I believe their Board of Appeals is waiting for the traffic study to be reviewed, just for your information.
Okay.
Is that because of change of use? Is that?
Yeah.
Bylaws. Because gas station requires a special permit.
Okay, all gas stations, no matter where, okay.
Mr. Chairman, so we were asked, Niche Engineering was asked to perform a traffic review for the zoning board, And so we're in the process of providing or performing that analysis, and then we'll send a copy to this board in addition to the zoning board when it's available.
Well, is there anybody out there who wants to ask any questions? Yes.
So good evening. My name is Winnie Bertrand from 6 Richard Street, and my concern is about health issues. According to National Institute of Health, there are several research which has shown increased risk of brain cancer and other types of cancer, also respiratory issues and cardiac issues to people who lives close to the gas stations. Around our neighborhood, we already have people with respiratory issues and a child with cancer. So my worry is placing a gas station with all these toxic fumes, which has benzene and other carcinogenics. It's going to make it worse for people who already have respiratory issues and cancer, and also put the other people at risk of either developing these types of disease. So my concern is, what is your provision in mitigating this?
Okay, step aside and let him answer.
If the board is looking for some medical basis, I'm not prepared to speak to that tonight.
We're not looking for that. But
however, what I can...
I'm sure that the Commonwealth has lots of rules that you need to follow.
What I can say is that there are, the actual use is very highly regulated for obvious reasons, both state and federal, everything from leak detection to, obviously to affecting the environment subsurface, to spill prevention, and obviously to venting, which I believe she is referring to, or most closely referring to. And I could tell you that Cumberland Farms, as I'm sure most other reputable gas stations, meet or exceed applicable state and federal regulations pertaining to the use of gas and be able to venting gas and dispensing gas. So that's all I could share at this point. I don't have any...
What kind of inspections do you have from the state?
Well, the fire marshal.
Fire marshal.
The fire marshal inspects it upon installation. You have to be a certified pipe fitter to actually install it. There's pressure testers that is done by the local fire department typically. And I'm not sure what I think it may be a yearly registration with DEP as well.
One other thing that Cumberland Farms does is they retain a company called Environmental Compliance Services, Inc., which provides annual monitoring and compliance of all necessary regulations concerning the gasoline service station at the site. So we have retained for all of our gas stations, and at least in Massachusetts, this company regulates and monitors those issues. If there are any issues that arise, they are immediately notified and basically handle any issues that may come up. The underground storage tanks that we put in are the highest caliber, basically new generation of storage tanks that go into it. We have substantial monitoring. Veeder-Root is in there. We also have substantial monitoring of the systems. Always have employees on duty who are basically monitoring the gas use as well. So Cumberland Farms takes the standards, the regulations seriously, and in fact goes above and beyond by engaging its own environmental company to also assist it in doing these monitoring the gas stations.
All right, thank you. That answer your question, ma'am? Okay. I don't think you got her name.
No, I didn't catch your name.
Could you go over and give her the correct spelling and your address?
Real quickly, I'd love for Phil to basically address the lighting concern that came up.
Yes, I would too.
Okay. So the project includes 8 freestanding site lights that stand approximately 15 feet tall. So I want to make the distinction that these are not 30-foot tall lights that are shining.
What are some of our, Bob, car dealerships, how tall are some of those lights?
Exactly, I'm not sure, but probably in the vicinity of 25 to 30 feet.
That's what I was thinking. So these are much lower.
Yeah, the goal is to have it feel more of a pedestrian feel. This is a convenience store. This is not a big box retail. So, so aside from the freestanding lights, which are at the actual fixture itself is a thin profile. We call them shoebox because they're essentially shaped like a shoebox, but they're certainly not as thick as a shoebox anymore. They're very thin, and they only point downward. They're LED, and they are bright, and they are sharp, and they are directed, and they're shielded, and they're directed and told where to shine light and where not to shine light, and that's the goal of a light. Aside from the freestanding lights, there's also lights under the canopy as well, and those are bright as well, but they're designed to be focused in a certain area. And then along the building soffit, there's some soffit lighting that's recessed into the actual building itself that shines down along the adjacent sidewalk, which is not as intense as, say, the canopy lights. All of the sites are designed to be zero or near zero at that property line. And you had mentioned about, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you had mentioned something about post-construction monitoring or checking. That is something that we've had experience with after a project is built, that is part of the as-built or as part of the process. We go out with the building inspector or some qualified person to measure light, and that's really what I could share with you. So I think anecdotally, I think the goal is to, as the photometric plan indicates, we strive to get zero or near zero at that property line, which, depending on how you look at it, is more like a moonlit type intensity. So, but am I here to say that, if you look out your living room window, are you going to be able to see a light? Yes. The goal is for that light not to see you, and I think I've said that before. So we can look out that light, I see a parking lot light, but the goal is that light not to see you. And that's what we strive to do.
Okay. All right. Any questions, board members, so far? Yes?
The young lady here tells me that we need a extension on the time to act.
Okay.
So I don't know which one of you will handle this for us.
That would be me, and we would
Okay.
have no problem with it.
His form is right here. What time frame do we want?
Well, I would say a couple of months. Hopefully it would go quickly, but we wouldn't want to have to deny it because of a storm or something that you guys can't get here. Well, we'll move on and hear a little bit about traffic.
Hello, my name is Maureen Schleback. I'm with McMahon Associates. We conducted the traffic impact study for the proposed site. So what I'd like to do is just summarize the study, and then I'll take questions and talk in more detail on any points that I've raised. So when we start out doing a traffic impact study, we usually approach it in 3 phases. First, we look at existing conditions, and then we project out to a future build situation, and then lastly, we look at the operations of the site and surrounding streets. So when we assess the existing conditions, we always go out and we inventory the street network and the roadway features. Pretty much our study area was Broadway at Richard Street, Broadway at Sylvain Street, and then we considered the proposed site driveways. We collected traffic counts in the study area on a Tuesday in June. The hours that we collected were 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. And from those hours of traffic counts, we derived the peak hour, which was 7:15 to 8:15 a.m. and 4:45 to 5:45 p.m. Since June is a higher than average month, we did not seasonally adjust the counts. They're pretty conservative, they're higher than average, we just used them as collected. We conducted a speed study on Route 138, which we found that the 85th percentile speed was 40 miles per hour in both directions. And we also collected crash data over a 5-year period that ranged from 2012 to 2016. What we found was Route 138 at Sylvain Street had 4 crashes over that 5-year period. Richardson Street had 2 crashes over that 5-year period. We then take the crashes and we relate it to the volume of traffic at that intersection. The crash rates were very low, 0.08 crashes per million entering vehicles at Sylvain and 0.04 crashes at Richard Street. So, we concluded from the crash analysis that there were not huge red flags in terms of safety at those intersections. Next, we went on to look at future conditions. We projected out at a 7-year period. So we consider a couple things. We consider the roadway projects in the area. We've already spoken about one tonight. We also considered that there's a signal getting put in at Broadway and Center Street. In terms of other developments in the area, we coordinated with the town. We were told there were no other developments nearby that had to be included in our traffic study. And then lastly, we reached out to Serped in terms of coming up with a growth rate for the background traffic in the study area. They had suggested that we use 0.8% per year, which we rounded up to 1% per year. So with that, we were able to grow out the traffic to our future no-build condition. Next, we looked at the proposed site, and we estimated the amount of traffic that the proposed site will generate. And to do this, we used trip generation data that's published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. They collect data nationally and organize it by land use categories. So the land use category that was applied in this study was for super convenience market / gas station. And based upon the building size, we estimated that in the morning there would be 187 trips coming to the site, 187 leaving the site, and in the afternoon peak we had 161 entering, 161 exiting. Because it's a convenience store and a gas station, many of the trips that come to the site are not new trips to the roadway system. It's often somebody en route to another location that stops along the way. We refer to these trips as pass-by trips. So again, in trying to figure out the amount of pass-by trips, we again relied on the data that's published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. For this land use code, they found that in the morning it's about 63% of the trips are pass-by trips, and in the afternoon it's about 66%. So
you're telling me that a third of the people are driving out of their way to go to your station?
That's based upon the national data.
Wow, I figured.
That's a big number.
So Cumberland.
Do you believe that to be a big number?
I would have thought it'd be 99% would be people driving by.
Pass-by. Yeah. So Cumberland Farms has performed their own studies of pass-by, and they find it to be much higher.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we typically approach this traffic study in a conservative manner. That's based upon nationally collected data. So we did apply the 63 and 66, but as a traffic engineer, based on the land use, I agree with you, particularly in New England. We're all out and about anyway. You're usually not making a trip just to go get gas or just to get a gallon of milk. But with that being said, that is how we applied the new trips to the site. Mm-hmm. In terms of trip distribution, we generally applied 50% to the north on 138, 50% to the south. We also did a delay study. We did that on a Wednesday in July. And because the volumes of traffic are pretty low on Richard and Sylvain Street, we actually conducted that at the Supreme Plaza driveway just so we could have more samples. And we did it during the peak hours that I mentioned before, the 7:15 to 8:15 a.m. and the 4:45 to 5:45 p.m. So what we found in the morning is a left turn had an average delay of 25 seconds to enter the 138 traffic stream. Right turns had a 15-second delay. In the afternoon peak, it was interesting that there were no left turns coming out of that plaza, so I can't cite a factor for lefts, but the right turn was on average 7.5 seconds delay. And we use this in assessing our levels of service. So now we're to the third phase where we start to look at the operations. And we conducted capacity analysis of the key intersections. And so basically, when you run a capacity analysis, you're measuring driver delay based upon the roadway conditions and the volumes. And it's ranked level service A through F, but typically you would design for like level service D. You don't design for A, otherwise we'd have tons of pavement everywhere. And so what we found is with the new traffic that got added from the proposed site, the levels of service remained high on Route 138. The traffic is moving without being obstructed. But the side streets do drop in terms of level service, both Sylvain and Richard Street. So what's interesting to note is that our existing counts during those peak hours showed no left turns made out of those side streets during the peak hours. And if you add as little as 3 to 5 left turns at each of those side streets, it drops the level service F, which is similar to every other driveway and side street along this stretch of 138. You see a huge domination in the flow of traffic in the peak hours, and people tend to adjust their trips so they don't have to enter 138 by means of a left turn. So as I mentioned, we are not affecting the traffic on 138, but the side street traffic is seeing added delay from the development. We looked at the site in terms of the access. For one thing, we looked at the tanker truck access. Phil already touched on that tonight. We were comfortable with the way a tanker truck got into the site, accessed the tanks, and was able to get back out. We find it preferable, as a traffic engineer, I find it preferable to have the driveways on the side streets to minimize the conflict points on 138. And also the employee parking is geared to be towards the 138 side of the site, with leaving the store front parking for the customers, which works well for the site. We did measure site distance at the site driveways and also at Richard Street and Sylvain Street, and found that to be adequate based upon standard engineering practices. So that was really pretty much how we summed up our study. There's a good layout to the site, the driveways are placed well, there's good site distance. I went through the number of trips that will come to the site. If you leave the site and you make a left turn onto Route 138, you are delayed. Like I said, same as every other driveway up there. And what we often see at sites like this, and I can give you examples of like at Cumberland Farms in Johnston, is, and I always hate to say this when the Cumberland Farms people are here, but in the afternoon peak hour, people don't go there if they have to turn left, right? People go if it's easy, if it's convenient. So even though we projected it based upon standard practices, what's going to happen in reality is people are going to avoid that site in the afternoon if they need to turn out of that.
I never take a left onto Broadway or Route 44.
Right. Traffic seeks its own level, right? And again, it's a convenience land use, so you'll go to this land use when it's convenient. So with that, I'm happy to expand on any of this or answer any questions that you may have.
Well, Steve, do you have anything to add to that? You've reviewed her numbers?
I have not, so I'm not a traffic engineer. So this is why we're having a separate traffic review as part of the zoning board request to review traffic. And so that's why, instead of duplicating efforts for planning board and zoning board, we would do one traffic review for zoning board and provide that information to the planning board.
Okay.
So not done.
But that's not done yet.
But that's not done yet. We were just asked, I think, maybe almost 2 weeks now. I think it was last
hearing last week.
Last week. So we were asked last week to
Okay.
provide a proposal.
All right.
So it's not been done yet.
Mr. Chairman, I have some information, and I'm sure Bob is going to talk about this later on. We just had a presentation by the Mass DOT on redoing the road there, and so they just did a traffic study. The numbers they quoted were astronomical, 25,000 cars a day. You might want to piggyback on, or take a look at what they did, and that might help you in your analysis.
Yeah, I've made a note of it for our traffic engineer, and so they'll definitely inquire about that study. And I'm sure, as I've heard, there are bike lanes that are being proposed and sidewalks. And
Both sides, yep.
Yep, and other mitigation that maybe MassDOT is put into that.
I was
study.
amazed
We'll
at
take a look at it.
25,000 per day number.
That's what I've always heard.
Yeah? Wow.
You agree with that figure? It's about 25,000 a day, cars going by that site?
We didn't do a daily count. We only did the peak hour
Okay.
counts. But usually your afternoon is about 10% of the total daily. So you have, you have about 2,000 trips in the PM peak, so that sounds reasonable to me.
Okay. Got anything you want to add at this time?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Did you ask you or me? Yeah, thank you.
What do you mean now?
Well, do you have any questions on traffic or any comments?
Not on traffic. I just wanted to remind the applicant at the next meeting, we would like to see some color renderings of the building, the way the facade's going to look. I know you have a couple of different schemes. I'd like you to bring your best scheme to Raynham so that we have a nice looking building to look at, to approve.
That's fine. We have some drafts of those, so we are working on renderings, so that's not going to be a problem for us to be able to provide full renderings.
We have black and white elevations. I know you just said color, but should I go to those?
No, I think you can do it the next meeting if you can bring something with color.
Yeah.
Specifically the canopy. The canopy, if it could be one color.
Okay.
All white with no striping on it, maybe. I think those look the best, but the board will have to digest what you have.
I think we are proposing some Cumberland Farms signage on the side of the canopy, but I believe the rest of it is mostly white with.
Just bring them something to digest.
Yeah, it's a white board with, they typically like to have their green stripe, but, that's something we would consider.
Mr. Chairman, would it be helpful if people on the board or even abutters looked at recent Cumberland Farms in the area? Middleborough comes to mind. I know Brockton's about to open up. Similar.
Well, I was
style.
thinking I'm going to go take a look at a few too, sure.
Yeah, so Brockton, so we did Middleborough, Brockton,
We both did.
Sharon.
Matter of fact, why don't you bring us pictures of them?
Did you do Hart's Four Corners in time?
We did not do Taunton.
That is a Cumberland Farms, if
Yeah.
memory serves me right.
But
They
the
just
Brockton
did, right,
on
Bob?
Pearl Street is opening up soon, or I think it may be open.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
Not open yet, so.
all right.
And specifically for light cutoff, I don't know if the abutters want to go take a look and see how that lighting looks and how it works in relation to the area. It's not Route 138, but it does have some residential around it.
Yeah. And all those sites that were mentioned, unless I'm mistaken, are corner sites. So this site is unique. This site is this is two corners on one site. So it is different. It may look the same and feel the same, but it is different from a design standpoint. So I think, I just want to stress, I think when we're, given the site location on 138 and the fact that it's a dilapidated site now, I don't think anybody would disagree that at some point, something is going to get developed. And I think at some point, everybody wants it to see get developed. And I think, so we're here before you tonight, and it took us a while to get there, but we have excluded any physical improvements into the residential zone. And we try to most efficiently lay this out by striking a balance of what our clients' needs are and what the neighborhood has expressed to us. So again, the fact that it's surrounded on all four sides or let's say three sides, because we're essentially excluding Wayne Street now. The fact that these driveways act, or these side streets act as driveways, and they will act as driveways whether it's a gas station or a restaurant or a retail facility. And I think it's important when considering this application what the alternatives may be as well. So, for instance, there could be a building twice this size where it's situated, and with no gas stations here, you could fit 60 parking spaces, and an efficient layout would yield these same four curb cuts in those same four positions, because you don't want to cut a curb cut in Broadway, because now you're going to have three access points within 165 feet of each other.
Right.
So good engineering practices will tell you that you want a minimum two curb cuts, and anyone that is going to invest money and property into a parcel of this size is going to want convenience and access, and that's going to yield a minimum of four curb cuts at some point. And in some cases, depending on whatever the use could be, those curb cuts may be closer to the residents. So again, we want to stress that we are not here trying to shove a plan down anybody's throat. We, like we had tried to apply on all applications, tried to hear from not only the board, but the residences. And I think this is an efficient layout that we feel strikes that balance.
Okay. I think that's it for this evening. I'm going to ask board members what you want them to stress when they come back. For me, it's looking at that July 2nd letter from our highway superintendent. We have to know who owns these streets, because we might be asking you to make some improvements in them. And drainage, I'm concerned with, as is the highway inspector. Planning buffer, existing roadways, you know, bringing again, starting with who owns the streets, but then bringing them up to standards, current standards. The drainage for them, lighting is a big thing to me. It is, I drive on Route 44 past the car dealerships, and some of them are really disgusting. They're so bright.
Cumberland Farms location or other?
No, car dealerships.
Car dealerships, okay.
Car dealerships. What are you two thinking of?
Obviously, the drainage issue, and who owns the streets? Are they official town roads, and what improvements would have to be made, whether or not the applicant is responsible or the town is, would be an issue for me. And as you mentioned, the drainage, and of course, lighting is always an issue on any project that we deal with.
You should definitely talk to Ed Buckley about the streets and drainage. We're going to look to him for input, and you know, if you think you're ready to go and he comes in and he's still got 6 things he wants, you'll be back at the drawing board.
Okay.
Have you talked with the fire chief at all?
Yeah. We met with, was it the fire chief or assistant fire chief? I'm not sure. He was present during our technical review.
Okay.
And one of the requests that he had was for us to put together a apparatus, the largest apparatus that they have, show how it can move on a site, which we did provide. Other than that, we didn't receive any
We need a
comments.
2-sentence letter from us.
From him saying it's okay, right?
Are there any issues with water
I don't.
Like domestic water?
from the North Raynham Water District?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I had spoken with that gentleman, his name is slipping me now, but we've had a number of conversations.
Arthur?
What?
Arthur?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yeah, he actually, I had not met with him, but I had discussions with him, and he told me exactly what he wanted, material, size, where to come off of.
Okay.
So that's reflected on the plans.
Is China Garden tied into sewer?
Yes.
It was, okay.
And we are proposing to reuse an existing line.
Okay.
Is it tied into gas?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Because there have been a few
Well, I don't
issues
know-
with gas lines.
I don't know if it's
138 of
existing
late.
gas. We're proposing a gas, a proposed gas connection.
I was just curious if it did, because we've been going through some issues a little further down the road at the Center Street intersection with gas lines having to be relocated. I was just wondering if that, you know, that's tied in. And
Anything you have, Bob? Okay.
So with meeting with I mean, just taking a look at Ed's, Mr. Buckley, is that his name, Mr. Buckley's letter, my gut tells me that
The drainage stuff is an off-site issue, so, you know, perhaps it might be best to schedule a meeting with him and kind of go through and really try to, I just want to make sure we're both understanding each other. Now with now with having a peer review letter, I think that might warrant, that in and of itself may alleviate some concerns or change the discussion to a more focused area that the board might want to focus on. So
Okay.
I just suspect that a lot of that stuff could be out of our control, so to speak, unless given permission to do so.
Well, that's why we need to start by knowing who owns what.
I think, exactly, but I think there may be scenarios where none of us in this room own the land that we need to occupy, so.
And if we don't own it and we don't control it and the people won't give us easements, then
Yeah.
You can only do what you can do.
Okay.
And thank you for the traffic report. That was interesting. A copy of that from Mr. Buckley, our highway superintendent. Okay, what else do you have? Anything?
I think for
Wrap
tonight,
up?
Building elevations.
building elevations. Color,
Yeah,
building.
provide color elevations next to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
You tell me.
Well, I think the critical path now is probably traffic. I can tell you that, in my experience, it's going to take us a few weeks to respond to Steve's letter, and then it's probably going to take him a few weeks to review it. And then it may,
So you're talking 4 weeks?
for that piece, but I understand that the client also wants to keep things moving, so perhaps if the traffic is ready next week, then perhaps, or 2 weeks, maybe there'll be an opportunity to discuss just traffic at that next meeting, just to keep things moving, so.
I don't care. If you want to come back in 2 weeks, come back in 2
I
weeks.
see them
But
come back in 2 weeks with the expectation of not having a clean letter from Steve. It's near clean, but I want a clean letter from Steve, so.
Well, I just see that getting some ideas on the road and the drainage and things, I just looks to me like more than 2 weeks.
Okay.
But I don't care. You guys, you come in, we talk about what you have to talk about.
Keep in mind, you can't act on anything until that special permit's put in place.
Well, I know, conservation's not involved at all, right?
No, not
Okay.
involved.
So,
We have,
yeah, you've got
We got ZBA
some-
on the October 2nd,
Yeah.
where they're waiting on the traffic as well. Yeah, the only reason I'm scratching my head is not being able to talk to the client, because we are in a PNS, so.
I would suggest you put them on for the next meeting, and if they're not ready, they can ask for a continuance
Yeah.
to the following.
That would
I
be
agree.
acceptable, if that's
Okay.
okay with this board.
All right, time to act.
No, it's, well, it's September 22nd, so that's why we need the form.
Okay, somebody took a form,
I have a form.
okay?
We can always push it out even further.
I push it out, December 1 or something. If we can wrap this up, the sooner we can wrap this up and go watch Thursday night football. but,
Understood.
But,
Okay, so next hearing, Thursday,
The 19th is our
19th.
next meeting. And we're scheduled 6 o'clock, 6:05, so whatever you think is the next one.
well, we can make you 6:15
6:15.
on
September
September
19th.
19th.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
And if there's any additional things that you think may be useful, please just let us know in the meantime.
Are you going to deliver that extension form tonight, or are you going to bring it another time?
I'm going to
Going to take a picture and then give it to us.
confirm, that- you know what, I'm fine with it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Sorry to leave you hanging out there for
I said,
however long.
he's doing it on purpose.
I didn't know if you were still there, actually.
I want to leave it, Burke. Okay. Okay. Next on the agenda. Raynham Preserve, open space subdivision. Who is here for Raynham Preserve? We have a letter? As discussed, I am providing you with this email to confirm my request for continuance of our hearing that was scheduled to take place at the planning board meeting. I'd like to continue it until September 19th. And we have,
We just put this on for 6:15.
oh, and how much, what do you think?
I don't think we're going to do a lot in 2 weeks. I think they need 4 weeks, but they want to keep it moving.
So
So-
620. All right. Raynham Preserve is going to be continued until 6/20, September 19th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You supposed to sign these, Maureen? Public hearing, ATG, Paramount Drive site plan. This is a continued public hearing, so it's already been read into the record. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, fellow members of the board. I am Brian Hughes, attorney in Taunton. I'm standing in for Attorney Ed Brennan tonight. With me is Mr. Dan Gagne, the engineer in the project, and Mr. Bumilla, who is the owner of the site currently, but not the proposed developer. As was stated, Mr. Chairman, evidence has been taken in this matter. I'm not sure there's going to be anything else presented unless there are questions. This is a multi-million-dollar project to put in a truck sales and service facility on Paramount Drive. It is, in our opinion, consistent with the location and not a problem for the surrounding neighborhood, and it poses no particular burden on the town, no students or anything like that. And it's my understanding that the town's review engineer and Mr. Gagne have come to an agreement as to the terms of the site plan, and I think we're ready to move forward, if possible, a vote tonight, close the public hearing, a vote tonight. It is a time-sensitive project. Frankly, building materials are slated to go up in price, and we're looking at just starting the site work in the fall before the hard frost.
Okay, so we saw this was in front of us. I think you had to still go to conservation. I watched you on conservation get beat up about your plan, that it was only a permitting plan. Good luck with that. But you did get the board to come to a consensus that they were going to waive the 25-foot buffer for the wetlands, so that's off the plate. They've already agreed on that. At our last meeting, Mr. Fountain had asked Mr. Brennan to come up with a certificate, I believe. Did Mr. Brennan give you a certificate of action to?
He proposed one, he gave it to me yesterday, and I'm afraid I haven't had time to even look at it.
Okay. Steve, I went through and saw your responses, and is there your latest or your last revised was September 4th, I believe? This was yesterday's that you sent us? You want to just review this for?
Sure.
I would like to close the hearing and move forward.
Mr. Chairman, Steve Ventresco with Niche Engineering, and so the applicant has provided information and sufficient information for the drainage, which for me was the biggest concern. So they've addressed those concerns. The last two items, which I think for me are outstanding, are the bollards around the building. I know there was some discussion about whether it should be on all three sides or one side, and I know they had wheel stops, but I think at the last hearing you had asked that they provide bollards around the building. So I think that's still an open question that needs to be resolved. And then the last major item is the easement. And we were recommending some type of documentation, whether it's on a plan or written, that outlines the easement and who has ownership to it and what they can do, et cetera. Just so, common sense, essentially, and that would be recorded with the plan set. So those are the two items that were outstanding.
Okay, now, the bollards, was there walkways around the building? Is there parking or,
the majority of the building is open drive aisles for the access bays around the back. There's parking provided along the front of the building, and in response to the conclusion from last meeting's hearing, we did add bollards along the front of those parking spaces.
Okay, now along the side, you have all overhead doors, so you can't put them on that side.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you identify yourself for the young lady?
Sorry, my name is Dan Gagne, a professional engineer with Beals and Thomas.
I'm sorry.
32 Court Street, Plymouth, Mass.
So yeah, now there's garage doors run down one whole side. The back of the building was just parkings for excess vehicles or vehicles being repaired. The front, you did add the bollards?
The front, we did add the bollards, and along the garage doors themselves, on the architectural plans, we do show bollards at each opening.
Just to protect the door
on edges,
openings? Yeah. What else, is there any more we needed? Why? So that would.
They didn't have it before, so that was.
Okay, so that's gonna take care of that. So if the board members are satisfied with where we are, what I would like to do is, if I make the approval subject to the September 4th letter from Niche Engineering, to satisfy Niche Engineering's letter, that will cover the easement question. And basically, all that's going to be is just a recording document that's going to get filed. We get a copy of that, and that'll be taken care of.
Chairman, if I may, this afternoon, after we had a chance to work back and forth with Steve, we did produce a response letter to his comments.
And I was very impressed that you got a letter out today based on his yesterday. Is that different than
Yesterday afternoon. I don't know if you have copies of today.
Now, did you send that? Yeah, Maureen, Maureen is on the ball.
Thank you very much for having those. So, again, our responses to most of Steve's comments were to provide some additional conditions of approval for these items. And in the draft conditions that Attorney Brennan sent over earlier today, it did address most of these items. So you should have that also for your...
Your letter of the 4th, what, did he address everything? Is there anything we need to go over in your letter?
Just the bollards that he had and the easement documentation. What I would do is I would just make it part of the approval.
Yep.
And then it's just covered. Now, do we have a separate list of the waivers?
Yeah, I've got the list here, I'm sure you're looking at it, the September 4 letter.
Oh, yeah, yep. All right, well, is anybody, any other questions? Russ, you all set with what we've have in front of us? John, you all set? Bob, you all set?
I do have the 3 conditions that Ed sent over in his last rendition. He had 3 renditions of this. I think I have the last one in my hand.
Okay, want to make sure that Dirk has the same one you have?
The yellow line, 3 conditions. Last page.
The board has the last copy.
Okay.
Oh, we do have, okay, so
There should be
Dirk.
4 conditions. That's not yellow.
I gave you 3 of them. You have it, you're all set.
Okay.
Order of business, here, a yellow marker.
So, are you reading?
Brian, you're familiar with this?
I'm not sure. I may have read it.
Certificate of action?
I got the one from yesterday. I have not been able to review the one that was generated today, but I have discussed the matters with Attorney Brennan at length today. So if you have any questions, I should be able to field some of them.
Well, he has 8 waivers, and Mitch's letter has 9 waivers.
I think there was one of them that wasn't needed.
Probably number 1.
Yeah, there was one that wasn't.
Or maybe it's
The
number
first,
9.
I was gonna say, the
Maybe it's
first one,
number
let's
9.
talk to scale.
Yeah, the development impact statement.
Yeah, that was all done
Yeah.
when they did the development, didn't they?
So, yeah, so 8 waivers.
Okay, so we have all the waivers on his proposed certificate of action. I wondered if this added the bollards, and what was the other thing?
the easement, and that's on there too. That's on his,
The easement we're talking about is the one being retained by the seller?
Yeah, 272 Hill
Yes.
Street shall be submitted to town council for approval as to form. Easement shall not allow traffic generated by the applicant to exit onto Hill Street. The easement shall be gated when not in use.
Okay,
So that's the easement.
all right. So
Now,
we
is there
just-
anybody here that speak in favor? Anybody opposed? So, you ready to make, close the public hearing and
I'm ready.
take a vote? So, meetings,
The bollards
anything,
on that plan?
and, excuse me?
Are the bollards on that?
We're gonna make it part of our.
Yes, yes, they are.
They are on, you updated that already? Okay. It's gonna be part of our decision, so. Do you have the 8 waivers on your cover sheet? I see they're on the front cover there. Have they, has that plan changed? Does that still have the 9?
I think that just has the 8.
It's just got the 8?
This does include the development impact statement. That's all.
Okay, so that's not gonna matter. So just go with the waivers that we have on the certificate of action.
Okay. I make a motion, we approve a plan entitled ATG Land Holdings, Inc.,
LLC.
LLC, Lot 22, Paramount Drive, Raynham, Massachusetts, dated what, and,
June 28th.
dated what
revised.
and revised through,
June 28th, revised August 26th.
okay? Got those dates?
No, I don't have the revised date.
Okay.
August 26th.
Okay, thank you.
Subject to, we approve the waivers as set forth on the cover sheet of the plan.
Yes, and at the last meeting, we went through them, we read them out. And those are the 8 waivers that are on.
In case it isn't there, that bollards be placed where we discussed at the last meeting? Or they're already there?
Bollards.
They're already there on the plan?
They're on the plan.
Okay. That's it then.
Motion made and seconded.
Second.
Seconded for discussion. Anything to add? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Are we gonna sign his,
No, that's just a draft.
that's just a draft? so you're
I'll
gonna
try to get to it tomorrow.
deal with that?
Yep.
Okay, so you're all set? You're all approved?
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. Have a good night. Tell the applicant, welcome to Raynham. We're glad that they were able to stick around in town. We love professional businesses. We love all businesses in town, but they seem to be a very professional organization, so I'm sure they'll be a good partner for supporting all of our youth baseball and girls softball and all of the things that the town has to offer.
Your door will be knocked on, you can be sure of that.
I didn't say that, but I'm sure one of us will be knocking on the door as soon as you open, so.
The leagues will be, I certainly.
Fire
won't be knocking on my
department,
door. Well
somebody.
past that stage in life, young
Raynham
children.
Giants flagging outside of the building.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Have a good night. Okay, we have, all these have money, Maureen?
Yes.
This was for Nitch.
My name is away.
Now, before I get to that, before you go, I asked Steve about, through one of the meetings that I heard Chris mention that it wasn't in our rules and regs, so we can't approve it or even look at it. So I asked Steve for the preserve, and it's not, we're not taking any testimony, for the preserve, the wet basin's not in our, it's not in our rules and regs. So I asked him to look into it, especially why was the wet basins taken out of our regs when Richard McCarthy was here? Number one was mosquitoes. Now we have all these mosquito problems. So I said, if we don't do it right, and we approve a subdivision that has a wet basin that's not in our regs, how did that happen? So Steve sent over 2 sections in our regs that gives the board the authority to add or change the rules and regs at any time. Now, we have to file notice, though. Don't we have to have a public hearing?
Yeah, it's part of the public hearing.
That's part of the process. So it's nothing, it doesn't have to go to the town for a vote. It does have to be advertised, and it does have to have a public hearing. So the reason why I'm bringing it up now is because the preserve, that's where they, you know, for us to approve a plan with a wet basin that's not in our regs, we really should adopt the wet basin design. I would like for you to, and again, I think we've all agreed about discussion anyway about the wet basin. We've had several discussions about it. We've had Steve's input. We've had, yes, you had your...
Is that a separate public hearing just for wet basins, or is it part of the public hearing for the applicant who's proposing?
Nothing to do with the applicant. It's our rules and regs, and it's for us to adopt.
You can't adopt that regulation during the applicant's...
No, it's totally separate.
It's a separate agenda
It's
item.
totally separate. It's got to be separate. It's got to be advertised separate. And it's got to be, and it's going to get basically into our rules and regs that it's going to be accepted going forward. So I don't want to just take something and put it out there and have us accept it, because we are working on the new rules and regs and trying to get everything updated. So I would like for Steve to work on one that falls within the best management practice of DEP, so we can all review it. It's not something that's just going to come in front of us and we're going to look at it and say, yes, we agree with it. I have done, as I said many times the last few meetings, I have been doing a lot of looking into it, and they seem to be a lot better for removing solids and contaminants from the groundwater. So they seem to work better, and the only thing I can think of why we got rid of them in the first place was mosquitoes, because way back when, we were having a lot of problems with triple E.
At the time, we actually had a death, if you recall.
Well, yeah, I know there was, it's the only thing that I could think of why we took them out.
And I think, if I may, and we talked about it a little bit on the phone, was that I think now that they're more, it's thought out more, it's engineered, it's in a different way, it's thought about as a more of an ecosystem than just a hole that was dug to fill with water.
Exactly.
So there's more thought behind it than originally
And
for the wet basins.
when we do them, I would like to make sure that we have a design, a landscape architect do the design, because it would be all plants that would be introduced into the wet basin that would work. In some areas, you're going to have 2 feet of water, other areas you might have 6 inches. You know, all depends, because it's not a flat base. It's multiple grades and
Steps, yeah.
so it's going to, you know, the embankments slope down. They have several different birds that eat mosquitoes. That's going to be in the regs. So I just wanted to address that, so preserve is in front of us next time again. I don't want to be saying, well, no, we can't, you know, we're not going to be able to adopt.
I haven't looked at the rules and regs, so I'm guilty. What do they currently say? You can do design A or design B, and that's it?
No, you have to be 2 feet, bottom of your basin has to be 2 feet for the water table.
Oh, okay. So
you're out of the water table.
We want to go below the
We
water
took
table.
it, it's totally, it's not even allowed.
Okay.
So, you know, again, there's no, gives us full authority, and we can do it, you know, absolutely any rule or reg that's in there.
So I should make an appointment with Ed Buckley to sit down and talk about it. Just a quick.
No,
Okay.
we already had that meeting.
Oh, we did, yep.
I met, you met, and Ed met. Instead of keep beating it up, I would like for you to.
Start writing.
Put it on paper.
Okay.
Then it'll come, I would like for it to be submitted to Maureen so she can pass it to us. And I have a bunch of literature that I can share with you on the wet basins. And,
I think we went through most of that last time.
So let us, and then let us get through it. We'll present it to Ed.
Okay.
At that time.
Yeah.
After we, have looked at it and had a chance to digest it. I told, in that meeting that we had with Ed, I feel, and one of his concerns is that a maintenance issue. And a wet basin, you better not have to maintain it because you're not getting in there. If you get in there, you're ruining it.
Yep.
It's going to be fenced off, and he doesn't get in and mow them like it's like ball fields, what we have now, these basins. Whippoorwill, the preserve, these things are huge.
That's huge.
They're, it's like a ball field.
Yep.
The kids can actually play, ball in them, they're that big.
I think the maintenance is once every 10 years in the main basin, and then I think in the forebay it's once a year or once every 4 years.
And don't forget, what Ed did add
was that hydrodynamic separator.
Was the separator before it even gets to it. So Ed can go there with his vacuum truck and vacuum that out.
Yeah.
And, I think DEP should even look at that.
Yeah, they should.
That was a great idea that he had. Give him something to go there and clean.
Exactly.
So he can go there and suck that thing out, and that's his maintenance. So I think overall, it's going to be less maintenance for the town and less cost. So if, everybody's agreeable, give Steve permission to work on that as part of our new regs. All right?
Yep, okay.
All right?
Okay.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
That was, do you have anything, Bob, for Steve?
Okay.
Steve, have anything to add for tonight?
Just that I went out to Nina's Way today to take a look. I know they're looking for street acceptance, so I'll generate a letter for the board to take a look at.
Did you have a chance to look at Orchard Ave to see if those, in the certificate of action, was requiring some concrete, some granite posts at the...
Posts. I did not. I can take a look.
Can you write that down?
Yeah.
Because again, I see people living in the houses and they should have to come back in front of us for final approval because they did an extension. It was basically a subdivision.
Yeah, we should have a final as-built plan review.
So maybe we can reach out to Lee to ask, do we have a final as-built so we can, pass it along so they can do their review, and that would be one of those little things that would fall by the wayside and we don't see it and, 10 years from now But I did drive by and I didn't see anything added in that stone area where we told for the snow removal.
Okay.
And I could just be dreaming, but I'm pretty sure that we said, let's do a granite something, so it's always there for a marking, and I think it was supposed to be on the property line or something. So if you can do that, and then just keep us posted on your wet basin thing, and
Yeah. And is the board interested in common driveways bylaw or part of the subdivision? I'm just thinking of the application that came in front of you with the two lots, and so they're basically building a subdivision roadway, and is that the most efficient use of resources, and, is there a better way to do it and not have to go full subdivision?
well, again, we did the retreat bylaw. If we are still, what's the word, bound by the regs as a subdivision, that's considered and consistent with the subdivision, right in Mass General Law, it says it's not up for debate, it's not up to us to deny a plan.
Yeah.
It says right in it. We're not here to deny plans.
Right.
So if it does meet a subdivision legally, then I would say, yeah, come up with something that gives the right to do, if you call it a common driveway, I don't know if why don't you put something in front of us, and then
Okay.
everybody can see something, and everybody can make their own determination.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, some towns actually have bylaws, and they will allow 4 lots off of a common driveway. Other towns are completely against it. I know Middleborough for years was against common driveways, and so that was something they.
See,
did
our
too, so-
3-lot subdivision is a common driveway.
Yeah,
And, you know, we do have nothing in our bylaw or our regs or anything that, it's kind of something that it's under DEP's requirements to be filed, so that's kind of how we looked at it. You know, all right, well, we'll go along with that, so if you don't need drainage, you don't need all the calculations, then.
yeah, and so the town I'm thinking of, they allow narrow roadways, so it's an 18-foot wide with like 2-foot shoulders, kind of what happened at Cornerstone, not as intense, and so it allows for continued development without the heavy-duty infrastructure, I'll call it. That's just something to consider.
Yeah, no, definitely, because the low-impact development is all narrow, less roads.
Yep.
It's, less fill, and if people are gonna make that, if they're gonna follow the low-impact development, then they have to decide, I can't do 8-foot cellars.
Right.
I can only do a 4-foot cellar or a split-level style house. If you're gonna follow those rules, which it should be, because the whole design, the whole idea behind the low-impact development is using all the existing grades.
Right.
And that's the idea, you're not clear-cutting the entire place.
Right, exactly. And I think that I'll have to take a look, but I think they allow an easement for the driveway instead of an actual right-of-way, so, you have the lots and then anyway, just another way to look at it.
Definitely something to look at.
Okay.
These are, all new times, and
Yeah.
our land's different than it was 20 years ago, and, so I did look at our master plan a couple of times, now that we're working on a new master plan. And total build-out, I think, in the town of Raynham was like 18,000. That's from that master plan. So I don't know where we are. That's what it was estimated. I'm curious to see what, the new master plan comes up with. But,
By the way, the town, the Board of Selectmen Tuesday signed the contract with Serpent to begin the master plan work. So that's in process now.
so it'll be interesting,
Yeah.
I think we're getting up close to what's left for, although we've been saying that for a long time. There'll be something coming out of the woodwork.
Always.
All right, so,
Thank you.
thank you. Bob, you have any updates while we're signing invoices?
When you stop being able to build up, you'll build up.
That'll be the next rules of rights.
I have,
We'll leave that for the next
I
generation.
have a few things to share with the board. As-built plans on projects that did not involve niche, projects that I monitored on my own. One being the Mastria Kia project at 1555 Route 44. That's been completed. As-built plans submitted. I did check them, and I have a letter from the engineer stating that it's been built according to the approved plan. I'll enter that into the record. I do have as-built plans done for the property across the street from the Kia, which is the old Honey of a Ham building. I have 2 copies. This is an as-built plan for your review. I'm waiting for the engineer's report to match the one that I got for across the street. That property is done on the outside. I have 1 permit for tenant fit-out. There's 4 units, and they have 1 tenant, and a permit fit-out for that has just been issued.
Crossed my name out because it was mine.
By the way, that's going to be a fast food Italian restaurant, if anyone cares
I
about
thought you said it was a Chinese pizza parlor.
Yeah, I thought it was
fast
Chinese.
food Italian owned by Chinese people, I'm not sure, but,
Didn't he say, he was just,
Originally, it was,
he was just giving me,
well, what I'm told and what comes in sometimes are
Oh,
2 different
all
things,
right.
so.
What, was it Goodwill or something next to Kia?
That's been closed, they moved to a new location, so that property is available if anyone's interested in buying it.
I presumed that some car dealership was,
You never know.
going in there?
Road closure, Pine Street over the culvert, they're proposing to close that road for 3 nights, starting Monday and probably to Wednesday, so they can get the sewer line for the subdivision off of Pine Street across the culvert. So that's, we had a meeting on that yesterday morning. That's gonna happen next week, apparently.
And Mill Street is being worked on.
Mill Street, they're doing some drainage on Mill Street also.
Drainage?
Yeah, it's been closed the past few days.
So that Pine Street, that's the one where we have the drainage problem. They're gonna bring the sewer line up. They're gonna get the water line and the drainage line that exists north of Courtney Way. That's gonna be extended to the subdivision and brought to the property lines of all the individual owners that have water drain problems. So that's moving forward. I'm not sure how long it's gonna take for all that to be done, but the sewer line project is starting on Monday, so.
Before Frank left, I did ask him, because I did see Mr. Looney here. So I asked Frank, I saw him leaving, so I said, hey, before you go, where are we? Because, we've been asking about it. And he did say that he was going out, start staking out catch basins and stuff tomorrow, so.
Yeah, marking everything out for Monday.
They're doing sewer, they're gonna start doing sewer, water, and then as they go, they're gonna be working on that drainage, so it's finally getting work done.
The gentleman who's doing the 3-lot subdivision, the 2 retreat lots off of Forest Street, did request me to ask the board if they had a problem with a water easement off the private way. I didn't think that would be an issue, as long as the easement was taken care of with the private owners of the private way. When we talked about having, you decided not to have the retreat lot driveway come off the private roadway. His concern with the water department is they don't want to have another loop. They want one main going down, and they want to tie off to the 2 retreat lots off the main that will be in the private roadway.
I did speak with John from the water department. I was downstairs in the planning office, and John from the Raynham Center Water District came in, and he was asking, and I just told him what we had voted on, what we approved, a retreat lot with 3 lots. I'm sorry.
Private way.
Private way with 3 lots, and then 2 retreat lots. And he did mention about how the water goes, and I said my only, that's up to them. That's up to the water department. I said my only concern is if you're coming off of that private road and you have a break and you have to dig up that road, then water department does do their own patch and repair. And when the private road is established and approved by the planning board, they have to do a covenant that has to get recorded, just like Cornerstone you would ask for. That gives the town the right to go in there and do repairs, but it's not going to be a repair on one of their houses. It's going to be a repair for a guy next door. So I said, it's, doesn't, I don't think it matters to the planning board what they do. But I just wanted him to know. So I says, if you have to go and do a repair someday, and that road, your water's coming off that road, and if I was paying one of the 3 paying for the road, and you're coming to dig up my road for a guy out back, and I'm paying for all of the roads, my road. I've been paying for it for years, and all of a sudden, water department's going to dig it up. I said that would be my only concern, but that's something you're going to have to deal with. I said I'm not going to, I don't think it's up to us to tell him how to run, where to run his water. And he was concerned that if he had to come off of Locust Street for that house, he might have to do like an 1 1/4 line instead of an inch line. Well, I had to do an 1 1/4 line on one I did. So, it is what it is. It costs me twice as much money, but you want to build a house way in the back.
Yeah, it'd float.
Do what you're going to do.
And lastly, the northern part of Pine Street, where the gentleman had bought some land from the town and subdivided into 4 lots, where Longbuilt had previously built a house and extended that road. Yeah. That extension for the last 2 lots on the land that was previously owned by the town has been completed with the 19 parking spots. Mr. Buckley has approved it. There is some minor landscaping left to do. Do I have the as-built plans and the engineering here for the record?
I took a ride out there a couple weeks ago, and I was gonna take my wife for a walk down into the, what's that park? Bridgewater.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Camp
Titicut.
Because I was told that there's still the big V's in the embankment from, they used to build houses there. And they'd build the house and then ship it down the Taunton River to Somerset. or-
Narragansett Bay.
Yeah, and they were built, and the V's are still there where they build the house. And I guess you go on the Bridgewater website and you look it up, it shows it. And it has a full explanation about it. So I was gonna take a bus. She says, yeah, right. She's probably watching because we're supposed to be going out to dinner. She said, yeah, not today. We'll go another day. But it is nice that all the spots are there because you can park and you can walk all the way out there. Nina's Way, we asked him to do his findings for Nina's Way. And town meeting report, October 21, 2019. We have to sign this, Maureen?
We do.
Nina's Way, sign special permit report. Anything from Serpent?
Serpent does not have a meeting in August.
And then we have plans in the other room to sign. They're on the table. Those pens are not very well.
They're not working. You're joking, really? Okay.
The wet, the
I got one.
Mylar,
You got one?
I signed. I licked it and I
Oh, I have more.
got it wet and I
Okay.
was able to get the thing to go, but it's... And that's it. Anything else?
I just said, we were talking about road closing. I saw a notice today from the chief of police that portions of King Street are going to be closed during certain parts of the day as well. Coming up, starting the 6th, when's the 6th, tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Going through the 8th or something like that. I don't know what they're doing, it's just...
Grinding all the pavement.
Yeah, okay, they were resurfacing it.
Maureen, what's this, this is, as-bills. Bob, as-bills for...
Cornerstone as-bills.
For Cornerstone. Shamrock Realty, so you have all those as-bills, or you... You want this one, Maureen? Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.